Hello and welcome to the Eco Modernist Channel Live. I'm Carl Pauls. I'm here with Gabe Ignetti. Welcome to the show. We have a few announcements to get out of the way, and unfortunately, we have a cancellation today, but I'll get to that later. And I forgot to set the titles. I made one mistake on the. We're talking about the new climate deniers
at
today.
COP28.
Yeah, and more COP28 coverage. But important announcement. The content of my contributions needs to change ever so slightly. That's because I have accepted a position at TerraPower. I'll be working in digital engineering under Nick Turan. So the reason that my content needs to shift is that I am under NDA and I will not be allowed to speculate on nuclear energy because that will provide sort of a possible leak of information or possible indication of information that I'm concealing, and so I just can't speculate on this topic at all. But I will absolutely. Yeah. Gabe's going to do the speculation for me, and I will give you anything that I'm allowed to talk about. I'll be happy to share the good news. I'm all in it. We have 22 nations now committed to tripling nuclear by 2050, and I am personally involved in that now. So I am all in on this goal to save our planet.
Yeah. And I could see myself. I can't see myself. I don't know if could you see me?
Well, I'm showing the screen for our later segment. I can see you. I can see everything. Everyone on the program should be able to see Gabe.
Oh, okay, good. By the way, I'm very good at speculation because I have a very fertile imagination.
So, is something wrong with the program?
What?
I'm going to double check.
Okay.
It shouldn't be. I've got. Sorry. Now I'm worried because the preview on Restream. Now I'm worried. Okay, it's because the preview. It's fine.
Okay. All right.
I don't know why Restream's preview is wrong. This is confusing. It usually doesn't do that. Okay, there we are. We are fine. All right. Next segment. We unfortunately had a cancellation. Our guest canceled to family emergency. So we are going to go over, three other sections. And the first is we got some great comments from the renewables versus nuclear debate on Facebook. We have a renewables versus nuclear debate community, and that is actually flourishing, and you can have your comments and opinions moderated by Gabe and myself. We tend not to impinge on anyone's free speech unless you break our rules, and some of those rules are you have to be considerate and respectful, and so if you're not, I'm going to get you. But otherwise, there's some good commentary there occasionally. And so I'm going to get to one of those shortly. The next segment is the new climate denial. And we're going to be talking about 1.5 degrees of warming. Is it dead? What's the denial? And then our final segment is going to be talking about COP28 and the phase out or phase down of fossil fuels. And our guest was hopefully going to talk to us about that, but check us out in a few weeks, and we'll have a great guest to talk to us about the phase out of fossil fuels.
Maybe even next week. I have to contact him. I get back.
We'll get to it when we know for sure when we're going. So next, comments on ammonia fuel efficiency. So as you can see, our friend here, William John Koch, says there's a possibility NH3 will replace Jet A but I doubt it will ever replace the EV. The reason is efficiency. And here it's pretty clear he's talking about efficiency of cost. Anytime you combust a fuel, you drive a mechanical engine of any sort, it becomes subject to the Carnot efficiency limit. That's 1 minus the delta of temperatures. The high temperature is limited by the melting point of the metal used to build the engine. While the hard limit is roughly 37% for auto engines, the typical efficiency is around 20%. That determines cost per mile. At $5 a gallon, the cost per mile of a 25 miles per gallon car like mine is 20 cents a mile. NH3 might improve slightly, but not substantially due to the Carnot limit. Go ahead, Gabe.
All right. Yeah. I'll ask you a question. I don't know if you could answer that, but I'm not an engineer. What he's saying in lay terms, is he saying like that the heat that could be that the engine uses could only reach a certain temperature before it melts the metal of the engine, and that limits the energy? That's what basically he's saying? Am I right about that?
Yeah, this is the thermal to mechanical conversion. And it's complicated, but he's not precisely wrong. But as we'll soon discover, he's not precisely right. When it comes to Carnot efficiency, it's definitely true that you would get more out of putting that same fuel into an electricity generating plant. So if you took gasoline, ammonia, methane, hydrogen, and put it in a generation plant, you will probably break 37% at the best case. Because
I think it goes 3 times, I believe. Am I right about that? Between an electrical engine and the efficiency between electrical and the a gas engine. I think it's something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly not going to break 100% thermal efficiency. But combined cycle gas plant can break 50 to 60%. And I was saying 40, 45% was in my mind. But yeah, it looks like sometimes above 60%. That's amazing. So, wait, some of these are conflicting. Wikipedia is saying 35 to 42%, but these combined cycle turbines are saying 60%. Anyways, this is because it'll take like a jet engine, it will take waste heat and expansion of gases into consideration in driving that turbine. And that's not something we can do with an automobile. And definitely because you are not always going 55 miles an hour, that's where you'll peak efficiency. You're not always going 55. So you're going to dip way down into like 20% or less efficient. I'm familiar with that. I'm supposed to get, 26, 28 miles per gallon, and I'm here driving in a city, so my efficiency goes down. On the other hand, a battery vehicle, an electric vehicle, those are more efficient at low speeds. So I'm super familiar with that on my electric bike, and especially an electric bike, I'm putting 50 to 100 watts of my own power, okay, maybe 25, of my own power into those wheels. So let's finish with this comment. Now compare an electric motor and battery. Charging the battery is 90% at home, 99% with direct current. Tesla motors are 95% efficient. You also gain efficiency through regenerative braking. So like the battery and on my electric bike, I put a little bit of power into it too. Regenerative braking puts a tiny bit. It's not super significant, but it is there. So the cost per mile for a Model 3 is down to 3 cents a mile. So that's a factor of 7 times less expensive than gas. But its electricity is less expensive. Okay, so he's talking about the equivalent gallon of electricity is 33.7 kilowatt hours. And here's where I think that William's getting ahead of himself because A gallon of electricity ain't no such thing. The efficiency of the EV makes it much cheaper to drive, and so an NH3 powered vehicles will never replace EVs. Well, if you're taking just the dollars and cents into account, you're probably right. Now,
but that does include the cost of the vehicle, which is you get sticker shock there.
Yeah, you'll get a little bit of sticker shock.
A lot, actually.
Yeah. Hey, looks like we've got a commenter on Twitch who's talking about climate. Great. Welcome to the show. We're having a good, relaxed day today, so I'll go ahead and read your comments, and welcome again to Ivan the Terrible and Cottonmouth NF. Climate is real, of course. We believe in climate change. We think that climate change needs every tool available to us.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's saying where he lives, they broke the previous record from 2016 from the hottest year.
Yeah.
December isn't anywhere near as cold as it should be. Feels like summer where Cottonmouth lives.
Wow.
Yeah. So and Cottonmouth's talking about the charge problem. The charge problem is not at all. It's this. This is the energy density, the actual energy density. So even if you took that 20% efficiency off of gasoline engines, it's still a factor of 12 more energy dense than a lithium-ion battery. There's still improvements to be made in batteries. Yeah, sorry, Cottonmouth. I see your comments, but we don't disagree with you. So, yeah. So here's the major problem with what's called gravimetric density, and that is that in a gasoline engine, you get a lot more per pound. You get so much more per pound, in fact, that a motorcycle is able to go hundreds of miles on a gas tank a quarter the weight of my batteries on my electric bicycle. And so this is sort of the big problem of so-called efficiency problem. And as Cottonmouth says, yeah, you can recharge a gasoline engine in a matter of 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Yep. Imagine, so I refill at a Costco where the gas is subsidized by the membership. I've already paid for the membership, so I might as well get the couple cents off. And there will be 50 cars going through that gas station in a matter of 20 minutes. You can't do that at a DC charging station. You could, you could do that at home. Go ahead.
Yeah. And here's the next thing that I think the pertinent thing here is missing is that, and it was mentioned last week, it's like a resource scarcity, which is a real thing, and copper. You need a lot of copper, and that's and we're running out of that. It's getting so, and even with lithium, though we will have enough lithium, but the price went up like 500%, but then it dropped too because the increases demand. Another thing is that EVs, if the battery gets wet, especially, there's a danger of the battery catching fire, and you can't put the darn thing out, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to answer your question, Cottonmouth, though, Gabe and I have both been environmental activists for decades, and we each sort of got involved in the advocacy for nuclear because we realize all of the work we've done for the environment really isn't taking hold. It's just not progressing And, around the 2000s to 2010s, we each took our steps towards advocating for all climate solutions. And so that's what we're here for. We're here for all climate solutions. And of those, nuclear is probably the most misunderstood, the most difficult to get people to accept. And so, welcome. We'd be happy to talk to you more about nuclear energy. And we're having a nice, relaxed podcast day today, so happy to answer any questions. I recently left the games industry for a very slight pay cut to go into the nuclear energy industry. And of course, the games industry is having a hard time providing jobs lately, and so it's just a coincidence that I got out at the right time, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a rat race.
Yeah, and we do have, we have some problems with people understanding nuclear, and that's why we advocate for it. And so if you live in a place where people understand nuclear energy and appreciate what it does, you can absolutely get that approved. It's just a matter of politics, and politics, that's easier than actually solving climate change, isn't it? Because solving climate change, you're fighting the combined pressures of capitalism, oil monopolies, rent seeking, and labor, and all of this stuff. It is extremely difficult, extremely challenging. Yeah. So we're gonna stick to the topic, or otherwise I'd have some fun with your Seattle comments. I love to talk about my Capitol Hill protest times. But back onto the topic of the podcast.
Okay. One last comment I'd like to make before we move to the main topic concerning visas. Me having my fertile mind and speculating is that, I remember when I first bought the first VCR, it was like a gigantic, it was like humongous compared to what it was later. And I think that my speculation would be that that's the direction EV batteries will be going. I was mentioning the Carl supercapacitors. Supercapacitors are not batteries. What they are is it's a device that could take like a big amount of electricity and hold it for a very short time. Mm-hmm. So you could put, and if you put, in other words, you put the energy in, it holds it, and then it dissipates over a short time. So that could be used not only for charging, but for if they're able to miniaturize it, which they're working on, that could be used for everything from opening and shutting your doors that requires energy to the bumps in the road. Every little thing that EV does, ultimately, if they get past that holy grail, will be able to absorb all of that energy and put it into the drivetrain. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that, Carl. So we can move on.
That would be fascinating, and I could see, like, if you have little inductors and you're super efficient in the charging, yeah, you can scavenge a little more energy off of the bumps in the road, but it's gonna be small. And I'm a big fan of regenerative braking, and on my e-bike, I've got an e-bike. It saves my bike pads. If I can just not ride my bike pads at all when I'm going downhill, and there are a lot of hills here in Seattle, that saves my bike pads. And so it's just by that I'm not wasting material. I'm scavenging a tiny amount of energy, even if it's not significant, it's something. But yeah, it's going to be more down to this, the gravimetric density of the energy medium, and that's 12 times better for ammonia, gasoline, all these liquid fuels, better than batteries, and better by about that much for the volume. Like, you could have hydrogen on a bicycle, except your hydrogen tank is going to be 2 to 4 times the size of the battery because it's uncompressed. It's so big. And that's when we talked with our guest last week, when we were talking about ammonia. It takes that hydrogen energy and compresses it down into a liquid form, and binds it to a more energy dense molecule. You get 3 H's for the price of 1 or 2
Yeah.
in the old
Yeah. Yeah, it's safer and easier to hold,
yeah.
to store it, which is a big problem for hydrogen. But anyhow,
Yep.
moving on.
On to the next segment. We have a new wave of climate denial. And what do I mean by that? Everyone at COP28 is still talking about 1.5 degrees of warming. When we know that James Hansen and the others involved in originally warning us about climate change are now saying that unless we take serious action, we're headed towards 3 to 5 degrees of Celsius warming. And this is a enormous amount of warming. It is way past what the previous IPCC reports, the SR15, the AR5, and AR6, way past what they have predicted. And so this fight over 1.5 just seems like wishful thinking. We have already hit the tilting point for 2 degrees. We are way past the carbon budget for 1.5. There is no amount of abatement of fossil fuels right now that is possible to get to 1.5. And so now we're talking about carbon dioxide removal. In fact, I think the whole reason that we're talking about 1.5 is to promote carbon dioxide removal and carbon sequestration, CDR, CCS. This is the narrative that we're being asked to accept, and many people will say it keeps fossil fuels in business. What's your thoughts on that, Gabe?
Well, it's expensive. It's expensive. It's like it's something that's extremely hard. I mean, it's like you're really making a very big bet on something that could be not that good. You have to be able to produce something as a final product. I mean, this idea of just storing that, like in caverns and this and that, that's just unless you're pumping, you're getting using those caverns of oil wells or gas wells that are you're getting extra value out of by pumping the CO2 in and getting the gas out. I mean, there's got to be money at the end of it. So there's more to it than just that process. You also have to be able to have ways of turning that carbon, that CO2, breaking that down and turning that into a product. So there's 2 more steps here that are involved here.
Yeah.
That before that works.
Yep. And there are a number of ways. Sandy from Environmental Coffee House is talking about natural sequestration, phytoplankton or other plant products that will take that carbon and convert it. Algae, perhaps many different kinds of plants could help convert the CO2 into carbon. We have things like biochar, where we capture all of the carbon from a biomass and don't release it into the atmosphere. We char it. We keep it as hard briquettes, and instead of burning those briquettes, we turn it into fertilizer. And so most of the CO2 is kept in that product rather than released in the atmosphere. There's still some released, I'm sure. And of course, we've got things like basalt rock formations. That's one of the ideas, is taking CO2 and pressing it into basalt formations where it will chemically react and sequester permanently there. But yeah, it's a very complicated process, and we're not really sure we can power the energy required in order to put this into the ground and keep it there. And that's the risk, is that we're going to expend so much energy on trying to sequester carbon that it develops into this negative cycle where we're spending energy to sequester carbon, but we need to produce more carbon to sequester the carbon.
Yeah, yeah. And the natural what Sandy's talking about, like one thing's like afforestation. I believe 2/3 of the earth is deserts. But what it does is it changes the albedo of those deserts, which causes a heating up of the planet, even though you're pulling out CO2. So yeah.
Yeah, the afforestation of the global north, the northern hemisphere is one problem, as well as the albedo. It must be 2/3 of the landmass might be desert.
Yes, 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 yes.
So yeah, this is the new climate denial, the idea that we can still achieve 1.5 degrees. And I've got some charts actually, but still, this is the pledge from COP28 is 1.5, because I think they're still trying to say that we can achieve something with carbon sequestration. So I've got this book behind me that has pathways. It's called the Special Report on 1.5 degrees. So this is what we thought the best science was back in 2018 when this was released. This is what we thought the best science was when it comes to where we're going to get. And so you'll see P1, P2, P3, P4 here. Can I view this full screen? I think I can. There we go. Close enough. That's a little better. So, all of these different plans, and I have a line here for the Biden climate commitments. that looks pretty far out of the way too. That's going way down here to the pathways 1 and 2, nowhere near the overshoot, what's called the overshoot pathways, P3 and P4, and the interquartiles. Those are like the standard deviations for these studies that were released in the special report on 1.5. And so this is our world CO2 emissions. And I've updated this. Actually, it's not BP stats. It's now Energy Institute stats, released in 2022. And this is billion tons of CO2 and our progress towards it. So our climate truth, our numbers are that we are nowhere near hitting our goals for 1.5. We're slowing down. Our CO2 increase is slowing down. But remember, this is per year emissions. We are about, we are over 10%, 10 to 15% over our emissions target for the major far overshoot pathway. We got a question from Polar Knights. What nations are adding more carbon than other nations? Well, it's pretty much break even. It depends on your economic output. And of course, per capita, America is at the top. So unless you're saying some people matter more than others, America, the global north, we're pretty much the worst. But of course, you also have other nations who have larger populations, and they're growing.
And China's the worst, but not per capita. Per capita is what you got to look at.
Right.
You know,
because
in total,
yeah. In total, China's, like you're saying, Gabe. The difference, of course, is that we need to allow for a smooth reduction in population from our projected 10 billion to maybe 9.5, and that means getting people out of poverty, right?
Yep. I can give you the rundown, Carl.
Go.
And most of them are oil producers, and I'll do this quick. Going from top to bottom, just it's Qatar, United Arab, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Brunei. Is that in the Middle East? Trinidad and Tobago and Saudi Arabia. Those are all oil producing countries. New Caledonia, Oman, another oil producer. Australia, who refuses to have nuclear power plants, and they're a cold nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And then the United States, followed by Canada. Interesting, but anyhow, that's the answer.
Well, Canada is a special case. They are not going to be able to reduce their heating energy output because they have a lot of people up there north of the border, north of our 49th parallel, where it gets cold, at least for half the year.
You gotta heat it. You gotta use a lot of heat, a lot of energy.
And so we're about 15% per year past where we need to be for the overshoot scenario. And this overshoot scenario requires an enormous amount of carbon dioxide removal. So how did we get here? How did we get 15% past our goals? Well, number one reason is coal. Here's the coal tab, and we should have been reducing coal as quickly as possible. Instead, we keep building new coal plants. We're keeping coal plants online like Germany. Let's say that again. Germany is keeping coal plants online and burning the dirtiest coal possible. Why are they doing that? Because they shut down their nuclear plants.
Yeah.
The good news is our electrical vehicles. Well, of course, electrical vehicles have helped, but they have not eliminated gas. And so our oil energy consumption, and this is mostly transport, has slowed. And it's slowed better than the overshoot pathway. But of course, coal is way past where it should be. So this is like some good news, some bad news so far. Gas, aka methane, well, this has grown way faster than predicted. And gas, even for this interquartile, all of these pathways predicted more gas, because guess what? Gas is better than coal. And so, yes, we should be burning gas in order to take coal off of the grid. But what have we done? Well, we didn't take coal off the grid. We're just burning more gas. Renewable energy, wind, hydro, solar, that's great. Of course, we are slightly past where we want to be from our P4 pathway. Maybe we'll even get into the interquartile. This Q3 here line is this small gray line that's so difficult to see because I didn't weight it very high. We might get into there, and we might even get into the into P3, that other more favorable overshoot pathway. If renewables really does take off exponentially, we will finally catch up to the P3, P1, or P2 pathways. And that would be amazing, but we really need to keep stepping it up. And if there is any time, this is since 2018, I need to update all of the titles. Those are wrong, because this is actually the Energy Institute is now the owners of the statistics project. And so, yeah, we absolutely are doing great when it comes to renewables, but it's not good enough. Now, this is the real reason. The reason that coal is so high is because nuclear, it fell off the cliff after 2011. We shut down 30 gigawatts of nuclear since 2018. Just since 2018. So how is it breaking even? We're uprating nuclear plants. We're bringing a few online. We're bringing just a few new ones online. Not enough, not fast enough. But nuclear is just barely hanging on at 25 exajoules per year. So this is the real thing that hurts. Seeing that 30 gigawatts of nuclear capacity falling off and the maintaining of nuclear, just maintaining it at 25 exajoules out of like 500 total, I think. This is not enough.
Yeah, I think New York lost 80% of their
of
their clean energy.
Yeah,
80%.
80%
shut
of their
down Indian Point.
Yeah, Indian Point 2 and 3 could have run for 80 years. Instead, they're turning on gas peakers, and they're keeping old gas burners, gas oil hybrid burners, cogeneration facilities like Danskamer. They're keeping those online. This is the reason that we're falling behind on our climate goals.
Yeah.
So,
and James Hansen, he predicted that, well, he projected that it would not be 1.5, would settle off at 4.8 degrees increase.
Yeah.
That's how many times 1.5 was 1 to the 3. That's about 4 times as much, I think.
Well,
roughly.
Okay. So it's every doubling is a degree, I think. And so we're basically 4 times as much CO2, I think.
Yeah.
As we were hoping to get. And that we need to rein that in. We need to commit to a phase out of fossil fuels. Right? And so that's our next topic. So our next topic is that at COP28, activists are calling for a phase out of fossil fuels. But what is the developing?
Phase outs are right.
Right. It's a good idea. It would save us. But
I think he misspoke there. I think what they're calling for is not a phase out so much. What they're really calling for is just cold turkey. That's the whole premise behind the boycott of COP28, because it's taking place in an oil-producing country.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're doing this terrible thing, producing oil, but we need oil.
Right.
You can't get away from. You just cannot get away from it. You have to phase out. You can't go cold turkey. It's just not real. And that's the problem with the nuclear. It ties into the nuclear problem too. Is that these climate activists, too many of them, way too many of them, have impossible standards. They see the seriousness of the problem, and they understand, and you can say they even understand the science, but they don't take into account the politics and the economics of that, and you can't leave that out.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go cold turkey. That would the whole economy of the world would crash. And
there's in fact a person involved in, and in fact I'm gonna let me reshare my. Can I reshare my screen with you? I forgot to. I'm sorry, I forgot to. I forgot to share audio with you, so let me get that done.
Yeah. Yeah, we're working. We're a work in progress here. So
there we go.
There you go.
So let's see if I'm at the right place. And I'm going to share this with everyone on the stream too. But this is a Unite for Climate Solutions Summit, and one of their principal speakers are now giving us the president of the COP28 conference and asking him questions. And so that's the lead in.
And yes, we're proud being busy.
The crisis informed the Women Leaders Network on climate and gender. And that was a very effective network of women ministers of environment and energy, and some foreign ministers and heads of UN agencies. And my foundation at the time was the secretariat of it. We worked for a number of years to help the wider constituency get more power to the gender action planning. And we got the gender action plan and et cetera. Now,
okay, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. This is the previous question.
Our terms of engagement, since engagement, we have finding mission. What are the real and the true issues behind this lack of progress? Knowing that we have been entrusted with the first ever global stocktake, we wanted to give it our best shot and to give it what we do best. And that is embedding and injecting a sense of reality, a sense of maturity, and us being sober enough to understand the gaps and the issues and help define solutions through the global stocktake that will help pivot the world in the right direction. And yes, you're right. Energy transition is one evident area that the world have not progressed well in. So one of my main principles as my COP28 agenda is to fast track a just and a fair energy transition that is orderly and that is responsible. And I will explain to you how I view the role of women in a fair and just energy transition. But the second principle is to fix the climate finance. Now, fixing climate finance requires a proper understanding of the problem. One must accept that the current setup of the MDBs and the IFIs will not and cannot deliver what is needed here. They have been created at a time to cater or to serve a completely different cause at a completely different time. What is needed today is a complete surgical intervention, not a reform. We need a surgical intervention of the MDBs and IFIs if we're serious about making finance available, accessible, and affordable. Making finance available through pledges is not good enough. Making finance available through announcements whereby we earmark some funds, yet
I come in here.
They're not accessible.
And
if they're accessible, they're not affordable, doesn't do us any good.
So he's talking about financing. This is the president of the COP28. I'm going to double check his name. It is Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, and so he is a he is a fossil fuel. He's a fossil fuel guy. Of course, this is for UAE. COP28's in the United Arab Emirates, and we get what we get. But he's talking about the structure of financing and the importance of actually acting on financing in order to reduce our emissions. And so this is the reality of climate action, is that we need dollars and cents to drive action, and right now we don't really have it. So I think they're about to get into this statement from Sultan Al Jaber, which everyone is complaining about.
Can I come in at this stage to say, Sultan, I'm really pleased that you did accept the invitation that I extended to you when we were together in Beijing with the Friends of the Paris Agreement to take part in this summit. I think one urgent message has come through in the entire day of the summit. I've heard it at every session, I think, and that is that we're in an absolute crisis that is hurting women more than anyone, women and children, the elderly, those with disability, etc., and those most vulnerable. And it's because we have not yet committed to phasing out fossil fuel. That is the one decision that COP28 can take under your presidency. And in many ways, because you're head of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, you could actually take it with more credibility by saying, I now recognize we have to phase out fossil fuel with just transition for the workers and their communities, and just transition into renewable, accessible, affordable, clean energy. It's not going to happen overnight, as you say. It will be orderly but urgent. I didn't hear the word urgent enough in your voice when you spoke earlier. That's why I kind of interrupted.
I said fast track. I'm not sure what urgent means. A fast track is not good enough.
Fast track is, it can be more of a managerial term. Urgency is crisis mode.
Yeah. We can always play with words here. You are a good politician and you know how to use words better than I do. I'm a businessman. I am centered around delivery and actions.
Well, will you lead on phasing out fossil fuel with just transition, as I've said, for both the workers and for the...
You can take the lead. I'll make sure I put you as an item on the agenda and I'll adopt it. Someone has to take the lead. You are you come from a developed country. Developed countries, I'm sure, can take the lead like they always do, and lead by example. You can lead by example. And like I said from the beginning, I accepted to come to this meeting to have a sober and a mature conversation. I'm not in any way signing up to any discussion that is alarmist. I am here factual and I respect the science. And there is no science out there or no scenario out there that says that the phase out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve 1.5. 1.5 is my North Star.
All right. So there you have it. This is that statement from the president of COP28. And putting it in context, he's saying the science behind our decarbonization, we're not getting anywhere near it. There's no pathway to phasing out fossil fuels in order to hit 1.5. There's nothing in the science that says we can do it. And that's because we are past 1.5. The only way we can hit 1.5 is with carbon capture, carbon dioxide removal. And so this is the fight. This is the new climate deniers. The people on screen, the politicians who are saying, but what about 1.5? We said we needed 1.5. Can't we just stop using fossil fuels? But the people need energy. Tell us a little bit about that, Gabe. You have a story about Uganda. People need energy.
Yes. Uganda has a lot of oil, and it's a very poor country. And the West had been providing assistance for them to put up a pipeline to go to the Indian Ocean. And once they could get that oil to the Indian Ocean for export, that enables them to build a refinery, which changes the whole economic outlook for this poor country, and gives these people, who are living, a lot of people living on $1 a day and stuff like that, $10 a day, to actually live a decent life. And the environmental, there's been so much environmental protest concerning this that they stopped. And luckily the Chinese have picked up the tab on that. But that is the kind of dilemmas that we face. And by the way, an interesting sidebar to that was that Uganda was just at the time that the Western contracts were cut, was also a time that Uganda was giving a lot of pushback to a lot of Western demands, for austerity and stuff like that. But anyhow, that happens with GMOs too. It's horrible. I mean, stopping farmers from producing, eggplants, and even though GMOs are perfectly safe, but the Europeans, they want to tell the third world that they have exploited so badly how they should, in that self-righteous way, what they should be doing and what they have to do, But anyhow,
yeah,
I had to get my horse here a little.
No, it's great. So this is an example, one of the many countries where it's the people's means of production that is hurt, and that's the solution, is that the global north, we are decreasing our CO2 emissions as a whole by 2 to 3% per year. The global south is increasing, and that is economic development. If we started a war with the global south, they would still be increasing their CO2 emissions. And that's what it's going to take. Is we need a super strong, a new deal, a going to war mentality, not to stop people from burning fossil fuels, but to transition off of fossil fuels, to provide something else. Right now, China and Russia are investing heavily in the global south, and they're doing a lot of fossil fuels, but they're also doing renewables and nuclear. And America, what are we going to do to provide an alternative? Right now, it's fossil fuel companies just doing what they've always done. And they have the biggest, their fingers are in the pie. They want the most out of it, so they're going to keep developing the gas pipelines and all that. Go ahead, Gabe.
Let me say something too about this. Global warming is an existential threat, no doubt about that. Not so much in terms of our survival, existence as a species being wiped out, but in terms of our existence as a civilization being just demolished. But people who work in the fossil fuel industry, the loss of their jobs is also an existential threat, which is kind of like what goes on in Uganda is the same kind of thing that goes on with the coal workers. And that's what I've gone back to. And I said, if you're going to transition away, you have to take into, you have to have a political solution that deals with the economic problems associated with this. You have to make the EV, let's say, or public transportation better than for people than burning fossil fuels, and on. Nuclear power, same thing. It's you have to have better solutions. It's not just let's have this eco austerity.
Right.
But anyhow,
no, it's right. And if we demand a lifestyle change from the West, it's going to fail. We need to make renewables, clean energy, EVs, mass transit. We need to make it more attractive than cars. And you can only tax it so much before, you're not able to get anyone out to fix your refrigerator or your toilet because it's too expensive to drive in your city, because the roads are always packed and you get taxed for going into the city. You're not going to get the service you need as, the upper 25% of the home owning, voting retiree or worker in a major city. You're going to be fuming that we're not getting what we need. And so that's the trade-off, is we need a balance in terms of making accessibility to your workplace, accessibility to the job site in many cases needs to be balanced with our need to push down emissions. Absolutely make trains cooler, like Biprod says.
Yes.
I'm all on. That's another thing that I'm doing this next year is I'm taking on a social media intern for Seattle Subway, and we're going to make trains cool again here in Seattle. That's going to be one of my other projects. It's going to be great. She's doing her capstone project in communication and program on the environment with Seattle Subway, and I can't wait to see what she produces for them.
Right. Well, if you need any help with video editing or graphics and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, we'll collaborate possibly.
Yeah.
But it's mostly her work. I'm the supervisor. I'm not doing like an enormous amount of work, but enough to help validate her research and her work for the program on the environment.
Yes.
So
you do great work.
Thank you. So where does this bring us? We're a little off track, but we're talking about the need to phase out fossil fuels. And let's rewind a bit. In fact, I've got this great book back here. Way back in 2018, no, actually at COP28, 2016, 2015, we asked what could we do in order to, let's see, get me on the right camera. This one, 5. All right. So way back in 2015, we had COP21 in Paris, the Paris Accords, and we asked 2 degrees. 2 degrees is too much. We can't survive. Humanity can't survive at 2 degrees. What is the best alternative to 2 degrees? How do we get there? And that's what this report is about. This is my last printed report on 1.5. I've given these to politicians, to important people, and I said, look, we really need to understand what's going on here. What can we do to solve climate change? And that's this. These are the strategies for meeting 1.5 degrees. And it has all sorts of stuff in here. The strategies, the outcomes, what carbon is going to look like under all those strategies. And those are the numbers that I showed you from earlier in the program. So how are we going to fix this? And we have a formula for how we think we can get there, but we've already broken down. We're burning too much coal. We've shut down too much nuclear. And so environmental groups have been saying COP is a joke. It's dead on arrival. It's not worth it. Greta Thunberg said that COP26 would end in failure. And India objected to the coal phase out because they need coal to grow their society, to pull people out of poverty. And so 26 was declared a failure. And then for COP28, we previously covered this, Naomi Klein said, we need to boycott COP28. It makes no sense. And so now, what's happening? It's the nuclear advocates fighting the good fight, and the fossil fuel corporations saying, oh, you can still make 1.5. You just need more fossil fuels. That's it. We're going to turbocharge climate mitigation with carbon sequestration, and fossil fuels is the only tool we have to do it. So I think we have other tools. I think we can get there. You just have to try. And so now the argument is, how do we solve climate change? Do we keep trying to pretend that 1.5 is still alive? Or do we just start building more clean energy? Do we compete with fossil fuels? Or do we ask them for a cleaner product? It's going to be up to all of us. So I think I'm ready to end it there. Unless you have any final thoughts, Gabe.
I think you said it well, Carl. Remember to support us on Patreon.
Yes. You can find us the Eco-Modernist Society of North America or Eco-Modernist channel on Patreon, one of those two. Eco-Modernist channel on Patreon.
Yeah. Was it thoughts without action is dead? How's that go?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
And thanks for the congratulations. As well, you should absolutely donate on Patreon. Any donations to this channel, any subscriptions, any bits, I'm going to send 65 to 75% of that. 75%, I think, can go to the nonprofit Eco-Modernist Society. I'm going to deduct as much as I can. I'm going to send all of my income from this channel to the Eco-Modernist Society, which is a 501c3 doing this important work of educating people about the questions of how to make society better with GMOs, nuclear energy, modern medicine, the trinity of eco-modernism. Great.
Yes.
So Sandy, I hope to see you Wednesday. In fact, I think I have time. I think I have time to hang out this Wednesday. So maybe you'll get both of us.
Right.
So let's do the station ID again. This has been the Eco-Modernist Channel Live. You can find us on YouTube at Eco-Modernist 1 or the Eco-Modernist Channel. You can watch us here right on Twitch at Soyaddle or soyaddle.tv. And you can find us on Facebook at the Eco-Modernist Society of North America every Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Remember, you can donate to us at the Eco-Modernist channel on Patreon. Thank you so much for your contributions, and remember, emissions first, peace and justice will follow.
I want to speak to you